Mitzvah Hashem. Oh, no. We're going to learn the Maimer Mitzvah Hashem Vayishlach Yehoshua, which is in a way a continuation, a hemshech Maimer that we learned before. The Maimer that we learned before was Baruch Hagem L'Chayavim Tevis, which discussed how the neshama down here in this world has a shlichus, has a mission, and by completing its mission in this world, the neshama reaches higher than it was before it came down to this world. And this Maimer continues on that theme. Yeah, you don't see it?
Somebody the link I said.
It says that it's streaming.
Yeah, it should be. Waiting for the person.
It says over here it's going already for 55 seconds.
Hakkelijk bevrouw Jimshi Yavin. Right? Hakkelijk bevrouw Jimshi Yavin.
Yeah. There you go. Oh. Okay, fine. I think we're good.
Okay.
It's the echoes. It's coming from here to there. Two phones.
My question is, so you got it from the link? Okay, good.
Okay, let's go. Okay, here we go. Vayishlach Yehoshua shnai manashim miraglim. This is the haftarah that we read like 2-3 weeks ago on Parshas Shlach, that Yehoshua sent two people to spy, to scout out Eretz Yisrael, to find out the best way to conquer it. And Alter Rebbe explains in Likutei Torah, hachiluk ben hamiraglim sheshalach Yehoshua lamiraglim sheshalach Moshe. This pasuk Vayishlach Yehoshua we say on the Parsha of Vayishlach, and in the Parsha of Vayishlach we learn about Miraglim. Those were the Miraglim that Moshe Rabbeinu sent to Eretz Yisrael, 12 Miraglim, one for each Shevet. And on that Haftarah we learn, and then the Haftarah of that Parsha we learn Vayishlach. Yeah, we learn Vayishlach Yehoshua.
You're saying that the Haftarah of Pashlach,
not Shlach, I meant to say
can be, because that's why Mr. said that I would know.
No, but every Pasha Shlach.
We can take a chumash, but
take a chumash. It's not
sure.
It is. Yeah. It is. You're guaranteed.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
It took another few seconds, like the stream.
Yeah.
So there's two sets of miraglim, and we find an interesting difference between them. By the miraglim that Moshe Rabbeinu sent, it says the Eibusher told him shlach, shlach l'chol l'daitcha. I'm not going to tell you to do it. You could send it if you could send them if you want. I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to get to Yehoshua. The miraglim that he sent were in accordance with a tzivah from the Eibusher. The Eibusher told him to send it. So the Alter Rebbe tells us on this difference. What's the meaning of these miraglim and the meaning of these miraglim? So he says. We'll get to the answer later. That's in Beis. He's going to explain. But first, he just points out the difference. That you should send them. I'm not giving you a commandment to do it. I'm not telling you to do it. The spies that Yehoshua sent, the Eibusher commanded him to do so. And then there's another difference. The spies that Yehoshua sent traveled only to Yericho to scout out that area of Eretz Yisrael. And Yericho is termed Man'ula Shel Eretz Yisrael. It's the lock of Eretz Yisrael. So when you break a lock, when you open a lock, you could open the door and you could enter through the whole land. And therefore, by scouting out Yericho, they were able to actually scout out the entire land. And it was enough to go just to Yericho. When it comes to the Meraglim that Moshe Rabbeinu sent, he sent them to the entire land. So we have two stories of Meraglim, two stories of spies going to conquer a land, and we find two key differences. One difference is that in one case, the Eibusher commands them to go, in the other case, the Eibusher says you can go. It's something you could do, but I'm not commanding you. And the other one is that in one case they go only to Yericha, and in the other case they go to the entire Eretz
So the
Yisrael.
tzibur was not to go to Yericho. Yeshua chose to go to Yericho, or that was the tzibur to go to Yericho?
I didn't look at the parsha inside, but the pashtus, it was all within the context of conquering Yericha, and the Eibishter told him to send
And then
spies over there.
by Moshe, did Moshe have the strategy to go or
Yeah. Moshe Rabbeinu told him to go through the entire land, to walk the entire land. So what is this in Avodas Adam? What does it have to do in our lives? When the Kudus Habir Bezeh, the Kudus Habir, the difference in why do we have these differences? The Alter Rebbe explains everything that we learn in Torah is not that pesasipot varim ba'alma Torah. Like the Rebbe was famously mechadish that Torah is milashon heira, that it's a lesson. So everything that we learn in Torah is a lesson, an eternal lesson for our day-to-day life. So what's the lesson to be learned over here in this story of conquering the land, of conquering Eretz Yisrael? So he says like this: to kol echad ve'echad Yisrael tzarich lichbeish kol hakechus ve'inyanim degufei v'nafshei ba'amis Eretz Canaan v'laseisum kelim le'likus Eretz Yisrael. Every single yid has a job on this world. The Eibishter put his soul into his body, and now he has a job. He has a mission over here to conquer all aspects and all dimensions of his body and of his nefesh ba'amis. Yeah, the body is not a halbut, so the nefesh ba'amis comes and adds problems. So the side things that come inside the body and side things that come inside the nefesh ba'amis, which this is Eretz Canaan. It's the land of Canaan. It's not a place that belongs to the Eibishter specifically. It says, hey, it could be this way, it could be that way. It depends if you conquer it. And you have to turn them into vessels of Elikus. You have to transform Eretz Canaan into Eretz Yisrael. So a yid is put down into this world with a body that naturally is a Canaan. It wants Gashmias. It's interested in Gashmias. It only knows about Gashmias. Certainly, the Nefesh Ba'amis is only interested in its own survival, in its own existence, in its own ego, and in its own pleasures. And the person has a job on this world to conquer this body and this Nefesh Ba'amis, and to make it all about the Eibishter, that the person's entire physical being, including his nefesh ba'amis, should be all about the Eibishter. And that's our job over here. So now we have, in this story of conquering the land, we found that there's two different categories. There's the category of Yerichai, and there's the category of the entire land of Eretz Yisrael B'chlalis, right? The different places that the spies were sent. What's the difference between Yerichai and the entire Eretz Yisrael? Yerichai corresponds to the three levushim, the three garments that the soul has, right? The soul is a spiritual entity, and it acts through the body. So the soul has things that it wants and powers, things that it can do, in order that it should be able to actually have an effect in this world. So the spiritual soul comes through three garments of thought, speech, and action. And through these three garments, and it's a seder that the neshama first expresses itself through the thought process, which leads to speech, which is sort of a precursor to action, and then finally it's able to act in this world. So Yerichai, in the makeup of a person, Yerichai, what is Yerichai? If we would compare Eretz Canaan or Eretz Yisrael to a person, so the city of Yerichai, it corresponds to the person's three garments through which the neshama acts: his thought, his speech, and his actions. We'll skip the bracket. So Klolos Haaretz, and the entire Eretz Yisrael, which this is the land of Eretz Canaan, was made up of Eretz Zayin Amamin, was a land that was comprised of 7 nations. These correspond to the emotions in the person, not just emotions. We mean to say, in other words, to the heart of the person. The deeper in the person, not just those faculties of the person that have to do with action. Action is external to the person. The midas are actually the inside of the person, right? We had recently in Chitas, sometime in the last week or two, I think, Alter Rebbe explains that that the nefesh has seichel. The nefesh has the capacity to be aware, to know about certain things, to know about the goodness of certain wisdoms, to know about the goodness of certain ways of thinking and certain ways of life. And then this seichel gives birth to a midah within the person's heart. Now his heart wants this thing that he heard about in his mind. And then from the heart, it comes now back to the head, but not as seichel, it comes as eisias hamachshava. Now he's consciously thinking about it. So it's almost like there's like a deeper brain, and then this deeper brain gives birth to midas where the person feels in his heart that he wants something, and these midas go back up to a more superficial brain, to a more external brain. This is, in case you're wondering, it's with recent scientific understanding of the structure of the brain. There's a lot of different sections in the brain, and each one of them is in charge of a different thing. So this idea of dividing the brain into different sections is now the Chassidus always described it like that, and now the medical profession also understands that that's the way it works. So the heart gives birth to the machshava dibur u'maisa. So the heart, the midas, is deeper and is closer to the inside of the person, is more the essence of the person than the machshava dibur u'maisa, than his external faculties of thought, speech, and action. And with this, we can now understand the difference between these two stories that we have in Chumash and in Navi.
I don't know the whole story. I don't know the whole story, but from what I understand, that the Goyim heard that Yidden coming into Israel. So all the countries around sent their armies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When she's met with the Meraglim, so she said to him that their hearts are very they're afraid of you. They're afraid of you. So it's not the fact that they were in Yericho. They were there, but they were actually supposed to go around the whole land.
They were supposed to?
It's mashma from because when they heard what she said, they knew automatically from then on that they were going to be successful. I think apparently they were supposed to go the whole land.
Okay. From the inside of the Maimer, it sounds like that they were actually commanded in the first place only to go to Yericho. So I'm not familiar with. You're probably referencing the Medrash or one of the Pirushim on the pasuk. I haven't looked at it, so I can't say.
Maybe I'll look it up enough.
Look it up and
unless I know the story.
Look it up and we'll see.
Okay. Out of 5.
Oh.
That Yeshua sent the attacker to go into Yericho, but the point was from there.
Yeah. But that doesn't fit.
But they saw the whole land through Yericho.
But Lachperes Kol Haaretz was what the inhabitants of Yericho said. It wasn't necessarily what Yeshua told them to. It's just that they were trying to make it more of a dramatic and more public. It's in klal. You don't think that they only come to conquer Yericho. Actually, the entire land is under threat. Maybe they were trying to rally support from the neighboring areas. What's for sure is saying a question needs an answer, and the Mitzvah Hashem will get an answer. But for now, we'll just say that what the Rebbe says clearly is that the tzivi, the commandment to send the Meraglim, was specifically to Yericho. So we'll look at it later inside, and we'll make a seder, Mitzvah Hashem. So why was the commandment to send the Meraglim was only to Yericho? What the person thinks about, what he speaks and what he does, that is under a person's control. And therefore there's a commandment. The Eibishter commanded Yeshua. And the lesson to us in Torah is that it's a commandment, an eternal commandment, all the way down to our times right now, that we are each commanded to continuously observe and investigate and look at our machshava dibur u'maisa and ask: is my every thought, is my every speech, is my every action directed towards serving the Eibishter, or is it directed towards selfish pursuits? On the other hand, when it comes to what a person feels in his heart, what a person's heart yearns, what a person's heart desires, that is not under the control of every single person. The tzaddikim, dafka libim b'rishusam, dafka tzaddikim, they have full control over their hearts. And therefore, when it came to the spies that Moshe Rabbeinu sent, and they went to investigate the entire Eretz Yisrael, which this includes Livchenas Amidus, Shi'u Kulam Lahavaya, This is the concept of investigating the midas and checking the midas and making sure that they are all, the person's entire heart is directed only to the Eibishter. So when it comes to such an Aveda, such a type of Aveda, that's not something that can be a commandment. That's something that is dependent on the person. If you could do it, what do you think? Do you think you could do such an Aveda? You're holding that such an Aveda of actually transforming what you feel inside your heart. So then go do that Aveda. However, the Eibishter, it's not a commandment because it's not something that everybody could do. A mitzvah and Torah is only something that everybody can do. That comes through revealing the Moshe every single Yidaz, and it's not something that every single person necessarily can do that Aveda. Okay, so in short, what do we have? We have the idea of conquering the land. Conquering the land in Aveda Sa'ada means that the person should conquer his entire body and his entire nefesh b'amis and transform it into something that's a vessel to the Eibishter. It's not its own existence. All it is something where the Eibishter becomes revealed within himself. And when it comes to conquering the land, there are two areas. There's Yerichai, there's the person's thought, speech, and action. And there, a person is in full control of that. And since he's in full control of that, therefore, the Eibishter commands him and tells him, you must do this. However, when it comes to the entire Eretz Yisrael, this refers to the land of the 7 nations. The heart is comprised of 7 midas, chesed, gvur, tiferes, etc. So when it comes to the heart over there, the person is not commanded because not everybody is capable of thinking that his heart should want only the Eibishter. A person's heart, since he has a physical body and has a nefesh b'amis, so a person's heart has a natural interest and attraction towards a good piece of cake and other enjoyable things in this world, and he can't change it.
But at the same time, the Eibush is saying that I know it's good.
Yes.
In other words, so just trust me. All the Zion midas are all going to be for my sake.
This is the Maimer doesn't
on the
go,
flip side.
Right, the Maimer doesn't go in that direction. It's an interesting thing you're saying, and everything in Torah is connected. So this Maimer is because what you're referencing is that the other pshat is Shlach L'chol Hadayit.
Yeah, in other words, I'm fine. I know it's good. I know what I'm doing.
Leave
you
it
want
all.
You want to investigate? So send somebody.
But I can't see how we can.
So what I'm saying is, so therefore, the Eibush is telling you that I believe that you are able to control the Zion midas.
It doesn't fit with what the Maimer is saying.
I know, but I'm saying on the flip side.
I would pose what you're saying more as a question.
Okay.
That if all the Purushim in Torah are connected, in other words, they have to all fit with each other because it's one Torah came from one Eibishter. And Rashi explains on the pasuk Shlach L'chol Hadayit that Eretz Yisrael will for sure be conquered. And over here he's explaining that Eretz Yisrael, the entire land, Lavdavka, can be conquered. So how do they both
but the Eibush is
fit
giving
together?
that it can be done. So the question is how? How does that play out?
Because you're connecting Rashi's pshat and the Alter Rebbe's pshat and L'kutei Torah.
Correct.
The question is if we can connect them, because it's explained in so many places that Dafke Tzadikim can change their heart. I mean, if you understand what we're saying, change the heart is like saying,
Tanya.
well, it's in Tanya. Yeah, it's already from the fundamentals that a Beinoni can't change his heart. Only a tzaddik can change his heart. We're going to continue learning that in a moment. So, saying changing the heart. I mean,
totally control you.
Yeah, but no, it's not just control the heart. It should naturally your heart person has no interest in cake, and you wake up in the morning and you're dying to get to shul, not because of the friends and not because of the cake, and not because when you finish with shul you can then move on to work. You're dying to get to shul because you love every second you spend in shul because there's an Aron Kodesh, there's usually a meaning of Yidden, it's a place of base Torah and Tefillah. This is partially what your heart feels. This is what it means to be a tzaddik. That a person should really, not false hate, should really feel that his heart has to change, and it's not something that's within the capacity of regular people. So I'll go on. So let's see. Like the Rebbe mentioned already earlier, the Torah is eternal. We then move on. The Rebbe proposes a different explanation of how we can have a shaykhis, but not in the way that you're saying. upon him. It's this that the story of Moshe Rabbeinu sending the spies to the entire Eretz Yisrael is included in Torah. It is an eternal lesson and instruction to every single Yid. And this requires a little bit of explanation, because the Rebbe just finished explaining that to conquer the entire Eretz Yisrael, to conquer the heart, that's not within the capacity of every single person. So why then is the story of Moshe Rabbeinu sending the spies to Eretz Yisrael included in Torah? In what way what lesson are we supposed to take out of that story? For most people, for the vast majority of people. For Yuvan, so the Rebbe goes back to Tanya, and Tanya, the Rebbe explains that there are different madrigas that a person could reach, and there's the madriga of tzaddikim and the madriga of beinanim. What's Shavedas HaBeinanim Hi Beikar B'Levushay HaNefesh? The Veda of the Beinanim is Beikar. In other words, if it's not in the times of davening, or if it's not in special occasions, the Ikar Veda of the Beinanim is to control the Levushim of his Nefesh. In other words, like we said before, what he thinks, what he speaks, and what he does. Machshava Dibur U'Maisa. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya that Midas HaBeinanim Midas Kol Adam. This being a Beinani is something that every single person is capable of. Because even when the heart yearns and desires a certain taiva, the person has the strength to hold himself back and to overrule this taiva that he feels in his heart, to not actualize this taiva that he has, certainly not in Maaseh, and also not in Dibur, and also not in Machshava. The person has the ability, the person has the ability to at least not voluntarily think about this thing. In other words, sometimes because of what the heart wants, so the heart just shoots up a thought and to the mind, and it's a psamiyas, a thought, an ekolodik thought. The person has the ability to push it away. So over his actions, he has the most control. He also has full control over his dibur, over his speech, even though it might be harder than having control over his actions. And machshava, sometimes a thought may enter for a split second into his mind, but the second he has that thought, he can move past it and change that thought with a different thought. We'll get back to that later. And this is the Aveda of the Beinani. Masha'enkin Aveda Tzadikim. What's the Aveda of the Tzadikim? How does the Tzadik serve the Eibishter? He be'ikar b'midas shebelev. The Aveda of the Tzaddik is primarily in refining and elevating the feelings, the emotions of his heart. In other words, his Ava and his Yira, that his love shouldn't be to Inyan Eilam Hazeh, shouldn't be to matters of this world. His love should be to the Eibishter. And his fears shouldn't be from matters in Eilam Hazeh. What's going to happen if he loses his job? What's going to happen if he loses his health? What's going to happen if Chas v'Sholom, other not good things happen? That's not what he fears. He fears only the Eibishter. Ve'ein kol adam zeichel is there, and not every person merits to be in this madrega of a tzaddik. Why doesn't everybody merit to reach this level? Because when it comes to the heart, a person does not have so much the discretion and the choice to say this. My heart is going to do this. My heart's going to do that. The heart, for the most part, is what it is. And then the Alter Rebbe says, nevertheless, like the Alter Rebbe begins Tanya with, that every person before his neshama comes down into his world, they make the neshama swear that he's going to be a tzaddik, and Alter Rebbe explains it, that everybody has to at least attempt,
Even though they're not shy.
even though they're not shaykh to it. And Alter Rebbe says, but the Alter Rebbe says that to a certain degree he can reach that. In other words, a yid has a neshama. Mitzat his neshama, his natural state is that his whole being should be filled only with love and fear of the Eibishter. So this is not an aveda that we're potter from. It's not an aveda that a person has the choice to say, I'm not going to even try to do it. I'll let my heart want what it wants, and I'm not going to even try to change it. The person has to change it. By trying to change it, first of all, he weakens it a little bit. It's just, the tivus to things that he's not supposed to have become a little weakened. And second of all, his interest in the Eibishter becomes a little strengthened. If mitzad hergel, because he's just used to thinking about that. It's just the way he reprograms things. Whatever it is, to a small degree, to a minor degree, he succeeds in that Aveda. That's one reason why I asked to do it. And the second reason is you never know. You might just be a tzaddik. You don't know if you have the neshama of a tzaddik. No, I mean it. Doesn't say anywhere that a person shouldn't say that he has the neshama of a tzaddik.
But by definition, if a tzaddik has to do an avodah, so it's tzaddik she'ein nekom.
True. So we're talking about somebody who's on his way to
Tzaddik she'ein
getting there.
nekom. There's
No,
two
not
tzaddikim.
tzaddik.
We're talking about more,
Tanya
yeah,
talks
but
about
we're talking about more becoming a tzaddik. In other words, what kind of Aveda does he
because a
have to
tzaddik
do?
doesn't even have any kind of rab.
Leave chalal b'kirbi.
Yes,
Yeah.
But he has to get there.
Some guys, bro.
No, it doesn't.
It
If
depends.
he has
Depends
Ran,
which-
then
He's not a tzaddik.
No, it depends. Is a
So I
tzaddik?
think
No,
it's both
hold on. You're both right. There's a tzaddik viral and a tzaddik v'tovlim.
Okay.
A tzaddik viral means shaharasha be'kafuf l'tov. So
Okay.
there's bad within him, but it's
not
subservient. But it's not totally gone.
So that's the madriga we're talking about here.
No, I think we're talking about even a tzaddik gomer has to first get there, and in order to get there, he has to go from one madriga to the next, constantly searching his heart and seeing is there anything in it for himself, or is there anything in it for the Eibishter, or is it all completely for the Eibishter? And with this, the Rebbe answers the question. V'yashlema says the Rebbe, "Dezeu shatzivui la'arek shiva amomim v'lich b'shis artzam hu nitzri b'chol doy." And this then is the explanation why the commandment to kill the 7 nations and to completely conquer their land, which this is the Aveda of a tzaddik, this is why it's actually included in Torah. The Torah tells us of this, and therefore it's it's an eternal lesson to every single one of us. Like we mentioned, to transform a person's heart to be something that is only interested in Hashem and only attracted to Hashem is something that is only shachted to tzaddikim, and not every person merits this. Because every single person has to at least attempt. He has to at least try to fulfill this promise that his neshama makes before it comes down into this world to be a tzaddik. And that's why it's included in Torah. So it's not something that we have a commandment to do, because if the Eibishter commands us to do something and we don't, then it's an Aveda. It's an Aveda. And that the Eibishter Chas Shalom wouldn't force us into a situation of an Aveda, tell us to do something that's impossible for us. However, it is something that we have to work on to whatever level we can reach, as much as we can do it. Primarily, it's the Aveda of Tzaddikim, but every single person has to do it. And that's why Torah tells us the story, in order to give us the lesson and the instruction to actually do this, to work on our heart to the best of our ability. And that's why it was written in the Torah. Every single yid has to scout out his midas. And over here you can already understand how this Aveda is shaykh to all of us. Even if I can't transform my midas, I could still ask myself, just at least for starters, to know where am I holding. Yeah, depends who I am. Depends who the person is. If a person is making a cheshbon nefesh, and he starts picturing himself that he is a tremendous tzaddik. Every morning he goes to mikveh, learns chassidus, davens, goes to work, gives his meiser, and he's pashat. He helps other yidden. He's pashat a good yid. So what's this person supposed to do? He's supposed to say to himself, right? That's the, in a way, you could say that this is the difference. One of the differences between Teres and Chassidus and other ways is that by Chassidus, this whole in other ways of serving the Eibishter. So what I just described is considered a complete. The person is mamash tzaddik. He's reached the ultimate level. In Chassidus, in many ways, this is just the starting point. It's the starting point that you do all the things you're supposed to do, and you're not doing any of the things that you're not supposed to do. That's just the starting point. Chassidus wants much more. Like the Baal Shem Tov famously says, Rachmana Libabai, the Eibishter wants a Yid's heart. I can't remember now, there's another Lashon, that the Eibishter Pashat has a deep desire to rest within a Yid's heart. He wants to be there. He wants to be in my heart, in your heart, in all of our hearts. The Eibishter wants to be felt in our hearts. And in Chassidus, that's now, the whole Aveda starts here. So this is why this story is in the Torah. And this is also what this means. That when a person says to himself, okay, Taka, I do all of the things I'm supposed to do, but Where am I? Am I doing it out of habit? Am I doing it out of societal expectations? Am I doing it peer pressure, whatever it is? Am I doing it for selfish reasons, for Gan Eden, for Elam Haba? Am I, in the end of the day, thinking about the Eibishter in every mitzvah that I do? Or in the end of the day, am I not thinking about the Eibishter in every mitzvah that I do? And it's very, very tricky. It's very, very tricky. It's like, for example, those who have the experience of being challenged in Parnasa will be able to identify, or in health, Chas v'shalom, for either of them, will be able to identify with this, that when a person is healthy or when a person is doing well financially, he tells himself that he has a munah in the Eibishter, and he does. And he does. Somebody asks him, why are you sure that your business is going to do well? Why are you sure that you're going to have the money that you need? He'll say, well, only the Eibishter. The Eibishter tomorrow could come and take away my whole business in a second. It's of course, it's all from the Eibishter. And same thing with health. If a person is or if we take it a step further, if a person is having challenges in his business or is having challenges in health, he says, okay, I have emunah in the Eibishter. But the question, and he feels okay, but the question is, does he see any way out? Does he have any plans to say, oh, I'm going to talk to that guy, and then tomorrow's going to be this. I'm waiting for a call back. The bank is going to come back with a loan. I'm going to develop a new line of business, a new this, a new that. So right now, it's not a challenge. And the same thing with health. If a person is being challenged in health and he's unhealthy, but he says, I heard about this doctor. He knows how to treat this situation. There's very good outcomes. So he has emunah in the Eibishter. What happens if you take these options away? Right? If you take these options away, that's when the work is very, very difficult to really know what's going on in your heart. And in many times you don't know until you're challenged. So this idea of transforming our heart, we should realize just what kind of why it's reserved for the tzaddikim. It's we don't know what's going on in our heart. As much as we try to convince ourselves that it's purely for the Eibishter, Chas v'shalom to speak negatively, but the point is that it's a big aveda where you have no wants, you're not interested in nothing. Nothing in this world gets you excited. I know that a piece of cake gets me excited. If a piece of cake gets me excited, for sure other things get me excited. The prospect of winning the lottery and having millions of dollars gets me excited. If somebody would offer me a house with a swimming pool, even without a swimming pool, I'm very interested. I'm very interested. That's what the heart wants. That's what the heart wants. Never mind talking about the more meanest of things like kavod and gaiva, right? Honor and respect. I want everybody to give me honor and respect me. Say a word. I think the Shalom Berjizan said, "Welches gresser? What's bigger, the taiva for money or the taiva for kavod?" So he said the taiva for kavod. He said the taiva for kavod. V'harayim and sold geld of kavod. Right? He says that the taiva for kavod is greater, for that people should respect you and say, "Oh, this," because people pay money to gain respect. To have their dedication on the wall. That the board of the institution should come to his house to thank him. People pay a lot of money for this. So kavod is greater. So especially those things to transform all of those. It's a serious aveda. Nevertheless, even though it's a, and that's why it's not a whatchamacallit. And that's why it's not a commandment. Nevertheless, even though it's an aveda that each one of us has to work on to constantly check our heart and try to transform our heart as much as we could, at least. David doesn't command us. What is our job? What is our business of every single yid? And therefore it's a commandment, while is on the thought, speech, and action to conquer Yerichish behem dafke, every single person has the full power granted to him by the Eibishter to do that. On the other hand, when it comes to the emotions in the heart, a person cannot. Okay. We should stop here. There's only a little bit left to the Maimer, but I don't want to rush it. Oh, yeah. So we could say like this. So what is it? If something to think about. So according to the first half of the Maimer, where we're standing right now, you have the Aved of Tzaddikim. They're able to do the good stuff, the big stuff, the important stuff of transforming their hearts. And then you have the rest of us, and we are, relegated to merely controlling our thought, speech, and action. So if you think about it, we're doing less important stuff. We're doing less important work. And therefore, the person could walk away from such a thought from the first half of the Maimer thinking that if this is the case, and the Rebbe isn't saying Chedushim in the first half of the Maimer, he's merely repeating what's explained in many other places in Chassidus. So if a person stops over there, he can walk away with a feeling of hopelessness and worthlessness, which leads, which the Yetzer Hara relishes in and loves, and it leads to a situation of inaction. So in the second half of the Maimer,
it's the gateway.
What does that mean? In the second half of the Maimer, we're going to see that is going to explain why that approach is completely mistaken, and we'll get to that in Mitzvah Hashem next year.
Tune in.